Everybody's talking about Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and that 2025 rookie quarterback class. So we're going to take it a year back and talk about year two expectations for the first rounders of 2024 in that quarterback class. All that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On NFL. I am not Tyler Rowland. I am Kevin Ostreicher filling in for the madman here today, but still giving you that double shot of espresso in the morning here on Locked On NFL. We're your daily NFL podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Wednesday, making Locked On NFL a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to the channel. In audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you all the everydayers out there. Thank you a ton for being here. First-time listeners as well, thank you for stopping in. And for somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Here with me today is the guest of honor. It is Chris Clark, one of the hosts over at Locked On Chiefs. And Chris, it's crazy how long this offseason has felt, but at the same time, it feels like no time has passed whatsoever. And now we're just a couple weeks away from training camp and truly hitting the start button on the ramp-up period of the NFL season, which I just am so excited about.
I'm very excited about it. And the thing that's crazy to me is it's very early July. It's barely the second week of July. And Kansas City starts training camp in about 2 weeks. And the reason that's crazy to me is because normally they're starting the very last week of July. And they're not even doing their normal ramp up. So the rookies and the injured guys and everybody else isn't going to show up early. So it's going to be everybody showing up at the same time. And they're showing up even earlier than they normally do.
It is unbelievable. And again, teams will start to trickle in. They're on their own timelines. I know for Baltimore, rookies will report about a week before the vets do. And that's coming up very soon for all these teams. And again, they hit that. The clock is starting on trying to get to a Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. But Chris, I know for a lot of these teams, particularly the ones that have young quarterbacks, they're hopefully expecting leaps from these guys, or at least big years from them. And again, everybody's talking about Cam Ward, what he can do for Tennessee as the number one overall pick in this past draft class. But I do want to take it back to 2024 because handful of quarterbacks were selected in that first round, starting off with Caleb Williams. So we'll start in Chicago with the number one overall pick last year. What'd you think of Caleb's year last year? Was it what you expected, growing pains here and there? What did you think of the situation, especially because Matt Eberflus clearly was not the guy? This is now a year for Caleb Williams where he will have Ben Johnson and I think a revamped offense.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a great situation for him. I think when you saw what happened to him last year, I do think the offensive line played a little bit of a problem area for that. And it's kind of funny. I'm talking about Caleb Williams considering they just got one of the best guards in football and signed him to an extension in Joe Thuney in Chicago. And while it's just an offensive guard, people may dismiss it. It is going to be a big addition. He is a stalwart. He is a guy that is going to anchor your offensive line at that guard spot, and it's going to be a big deal. And that will help Caleb Williams because he's not going to have to worry about interior pressure near as much. And that is one of the quarterback's worst enemies is interior pressure coming from defensive tackles. That should be shored up a little bit this year with Joe Thuney there. I do think that you look at what he's going to be able to do this season. I think he's going to look even better than he did last year. The question is can he grow from where he was last year, and how much of a change is it going to be? And the bigger thing that I'm questioning is, while it's going to be great with Ben Johnson, I think that Ben Johnson will be a good coach and he will be great for Caleb Williams. The bigger question is how long is it going to take him to adapt to that offense, and how quickly can he get it going? Because that is going to be a part of it. Is he's completely changing everything from year one to year two offensively. There's going to be a lot of changes.
Yeah, and especially I think with the fact that Caleb is going to have his hands full in that division. The NFC North is absolutely loaded right now. I mean, you mentioned just on the defensive line with these opponents he's going to have to face twice a year, Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. That's no easy task. And for the Bears, I thought it was a great move to go and get a Joe Thuney. And this is what you're supposed to do with a quarterback who's on a rookie contract, is go get those expensive veterans that, maybe teams can't keep. And Kansas City made a decision, as you know, Chris, to move off of him. And I think the Bears were able to benefit from that. Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears called Joe Thuney an Iron Man, which is, I think great for Caleb Williams and this Bears team. But he talked about Caleb Williams and his floor and what that could mean for the Bears this season. So I want to play this clip from Lauren, and then Chris and I will react to it on the other side.
See Caleb Williams. Like, he's not going to get worse from what we saw this past season. And what we saw this past season was, 3,500 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Like, yeah, he took a lot of sacks and probably brought on more pressure and probably tried to do a little bit too much. But like the Caleb Williams we saw as a rookie, if he say he hypothetically somehow never got any better, he's still like right there as a starting caliber NFL quarterback, a low end starting caliber NFL quarterback, but like.
Yeah, and Chris, I know the Bears' plan is not for Caleb Williams to be a low-end starting NFL quarterback.
Right?
I think that'd be a pretty big disaster. But how much of a leap do you think he can take? Let's say, you mentioned Ben Johnson changing the offense. Let's say he gets that down pretty early and everything is going smoothly with the NFC being the way it is, with him being in a tough division. Lauren talked about the floor. What do you think his ceiling is for this year, all things considered?
Personally, I think his ceiling is pretty high. The team ceiling is really going to be the question for me, and it's because he's in the division. I mean, you have the Bears, obviously, who he plays for, but you all have Lions, who Ben Johnson's coming from. You have the Packers, and you have the Vikings, who have been a good team for years as well. So you're in a very tough division, and it's a division that you're going to have to probably win 11 games to have a chance at winning the division, and that's probably not going to be enough, would be my guess. Unless all the teams beat up on each other, which is possible with that kind of loaded division. So I do think that it's going to be a problem.
For Chicago, I mean, mind you, Chris, it took 15 wins for the Lions to win that division last season with how good Minnesota was with Sam Darnold at the helm. So hopefully Minnesota can get that production out of J.J. McCarthy. But Caleb Williams is going to be a big X factor. He's the X factor for Chicago, in my opinion. But I agree with you where it's not just about Caleb here. It is about the team and how everybody can grow alongside him. And I don't know what it's going to look like for them, because I still think while people are lower on Detroit than they were last year, I think that they're still going to, they're the favorite to me in that division. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But Minnesota and Green Bay can be those kind of dark horse teams. And then, you look at a team like Chicago, who has the potential to maybe be that sneaky team. A team that is not sneaky, though, is the Washington Commanders. They snuck up on everybody last year. So now they have the bullseye on their back. Everybody is expecting the Commanders to come out with a vengeance. Obviously, the NFC Championship run last season, losing to Philadelphia, who ended up going on to win the Super Bowl. But David Harrison of Locked On Commanders had an interesting point about Caleb Williams and the sophomore slump talk that everyone's talking about with him this season. So I want to play that, and then Chris and I'll talk about it.
But everybody wants to talk about Jayden Daniels' sophomore slump potential. But what if year one was his floor? All right. Some people want to talk about the national narrative that there's a sophomore slump coming and why it could be different. Some are just asking in general, could it be coming? And some are considering, could it be even better in year two than it was in year one? I think personally, my gut, what I've seen, what I've heard, tells me that's more likely you're going to get a better Jayden Daniels in year two than you are in year one.
This, to me, I think is the conversation with the Commanders, Chris. They made the NFC Championship game in year one. Jayden Daniels have had a phenomenal season. In this day and age of how the NFL is viewed and how the NFL is talked about, if the Commanders lose in the NFC Championship again, or lose in the divisional round, or lose in the wild card round, it is going to be considered a massive disappointment. The only way that they can improve from last year from a pure playoff perspective is making the Super Bowl. I don't think that's totally fair to Jayden Daniels and company. Now, I think the expectations are there because of the year that they had. I think they made great additions, but Jayden Daniels, we saw one of the more poised rookie quarterbacks we have seen in recent years, just cool, calm, and collected, dicing up defenses. This Commanders team is intriguing to me, Chris, because I think that they have a lot of potential, but I don't want to base their season off of where they finish. I want to do it more based off of, look, this team has super high expectations, and I expect them to reach a lot of them this year.
Yeah, and you talk about being in a tough division. When we talked about Caleb Williams, look at where Jayden Daniels is. Jayden Daniels is in a division with the Super Bowl champions, and that's not going to be easy either. So, I think when you look at how that's going to go in Washington, you're absolutely correct. It's a question of, can they be better than they were last year when they made the NFC Championship game? They got on a run late in the season. They were able to do all these different things that nobody expected. They expected Daniels to be good, but they didn't expect him to be as good as he was. Can he take a step forward, or is it going to be a situation where, I don't think that you're going to see a sophomore slump from him, but what you could see is you could see defenses adjusting and forcing him to do things that they didn't try to force him to do last year. That could cause him a little bit of an issue. I don't think it's a huge step back, but it could be a little bit of a step back. But you're right. Without going to the Super Bowl, how do you move forward as an organization and feel like it's a better year than you had the year before? That's a bad for a good team.
I can just see it now, the headlines. If they have a great year and then they run into a hot Philly again, or there's another team and they lose in the divisional round, is Jayden Daniels really the answer? Is he good enough? And I was like, that's not a fair thing to put on this guy, because, again, you can't assume that a team is going to be competitive year after year. They have to obviously show it. But I think the Commanders do have a very long window of competitiveness with Jayden Daniels. So I think, they have opportunities to get better. And even if this year doesn't go the way that they want it to, I still think Washington has a long runway ahead of them. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll move on to Drake Maye, who was the number 3 overall pick in that class, and talk about Michael Penix. Is he the future of the Atlanta Falcons? All that and more coming up on Locked On NFL. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. Now, maybe being a Baltimore guy, I am an Orioles fan, and look, it's not been a good year to be an Orioles fan, all right? It hasn't been good, I understand. And that on FanDuel, you look at the World Series odds, Baltimore right now is plus 16,000. So not great, right? A lot of injuries for the Orioles. But hey, if you're feeling spicy, maybe you want to look at those Baltimore World Series odds. It's something you want to potentially invest in. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Back here on Locked On NFL, Kevin Oestreicher and Chris Clark still talking with you here, breaking down all the biggest stories around the NFL with the help of our Locked On NFL experts. And Chris, Drake Maye, year one, a lot of people were really pleased with what he was able to do in New England, especially in the situation he was thrust into. There was a lot of organizational turmoil. The skill position players around him weren't great. The offensive line struggled. Well, New England invested a lot into Drake Maye and the future of that offense. Will Campbell obviously coming in with number 4 overall pick. They bring in some vet receivers to find Diggs, and they spend a lot of money on that defense too, which of course, if they play well, helps the offense out. What are your expectations, not only for Drake Maye in year 2, but how much of a leap do you expect from the Patriots as a whole in that AFC East?
That's another tough division, but I do think the Patriots take a step forward in year 2 under Drake Maye. I think when you look at what they were able to do last year, I think that it was really kind of funny because they come out and they beat the Bengals. Nobody expected them to beat the Bengals week 1. And then you're set up thinking, oh, well, this is going to be a different year than we expected. And it really wasn't. Like, they fell off throughout the rest of the season. I think Drake Maye is going to take a step forward. And it's the question of, can they get all the parts working together, and can they get them all working together quickly? Because it's not a matter of, can you bring in all these pieces and can you make them work together? It's, okay, can you get to a point where you can win 4 of the first 7 or 8 games to have a chance to do something later in the season? Because if you lose, this isn't a team like the Bengals, and I hate going back to them, but the Bengals will come out and lose, 4 of the first 6 and then somehow make the playoffs. That's not going to happen with the Patriots. Maybe in a few years they can do something like that, but that's not who Drake Maye is, and that's not who this team is going to be for the Patriots. But I do think that they can be a much better team in 2025.
If you want to talk about how bad the Bengals have been, Chris, I'm your guy. We can talk about that for a while.
I know.
I don't get it. It's very quick side note. They're like 1-9 under Zach Taylor in the first 2 weeks of the season over his tenure there, which is just atrocious. And there's a whole other conversation with the Bengals, but it's different timelines and different conversations right now for a team like that and a team like where New England is. And Nick Cattle's over at Locked On Patriots had a pretty interesting take on Drake Maye in terms of how you can evaluate him this season, and actually talked about year 3 and why that will define Drake Maye's ceiling instead of year 2. So take a listen to what Nick had to say, and Chris and I will talk about it next.
And year 3 will be the ultimate tell of ceiling versus floor for Maye. I'm not looking at 2025 as an either or of those. I'm just not looking at it and saying to myself, well, this is the best. This is the ceiling that Maye can hit. And I'm also not looking at it and saying, oh, well, that's just the floor. We'll see what happens. I would hope that Drake Maye's floor was last season, given what he had to deal with, and I feel like it probably is going to be that.
And I think the expectation factor is a thing here with New England, Chris, where I think everybody understands that the AFC East is Buffalo's division here, and no one's really second-guessing that or questioning it, whereas for a Commanders team with Jayden Daniels, who we talked about in the first part of the show, it's like, man, they're going to be competing with Philadelphia for that NFC East. And like, there's going to be a conversation with that. So I think it's really no harm, no foul if Drake Maye shows improvement, but the Patriots again, go like 5-11 or 6-11 or, whatever it may be. But I do expect them to take a leap. Like, it is important that there is progress being made.
I wouldn't be surprised if they get closer to 500 than that, especially if they start winning games late in the season. The issue that you have, and this is, go back to when Kansas City got Andy Reid over 10 years ago. He came in and they won, I think, 13 games the first season. Teams don't do that with a new head coach. Teams don't do that with new quarterbacks and new systems and all of that. That's what they're dealing with in New England right now. So you're not going to be in a great situation in that regard. So I do think that, you have to look at it with a grain of salt. You have to figure 6, 7, 8, 9 wins is probably going to be your max, especially in a division where you're going against 2 tough teams in Buffalo and Miami. Obviously we don't even know what the Jets are going to look like this year. So that's up in the air as well.
Yeah, and I think that if you can somehow get to like 8-9 if you're New England, or 9-8, it's enough to keep you in the playoff race for the season. I don't think it ends up getting you in with the AFC having the teams that it does, but at least it shows you that for the future, and kind of like what Nick was talking about, like year 3 for Drake Maye, it gives you that hope that it's progressive steps. It's steps to where you want to ultimately be. It's that progression a lot of people are talking about here now. Michael Penix, Chris, one of the most controversial, probably the most controversial selection in that 2024 draft class after the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to give him a boatload of money. Well, the Falcons at number 8 say, hey, you know what? We're going to take Michael Penix Jr. I think Michael Penix is really intriguing, and I actually like him a lot as a player in this Falcons offense. I think the Falcons have been looking for someone to maximize the skill position players they have. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. I mean, can someone please save Kyle Pitts, especially for my fantasy teams? Like, I can't quit on Kyle Pitts. But Aaron Freeman had a very interesting point about how the Falcons are running their offense, or how they should have run their offense last season. I want to play that because it could be an indicator of what the Falcons want to do this upcoming year with Michael Penix. So take a listen.
I should probably look up, like, how much better would this offense have actually been if they just had a league average play action passing attack? Because as we know, this team's play action passing attack was near the bottom of the league, if not the outright bottom of the league last year. And they had a pretty good offense despite that. But I looked up some of the numbers, and basically an average NFL team runs play action about 25% of the time, averages about 8.3 yards per pass attempt on play action, and throws touchdowns on about 7% of their attempts off of play action. And doing the math on that, if the Falcons just had an average play action passing attack, they would have probably added about 1,000 yards to their offense, passing offense last year, and potentially 10 touchdowns. And, that would have taken them from, 5th in passing yards last year to number 1 in passing yards last year. And it would have taken them from 20th in passing touchdowns last year to 6th in passing touchdowns last year. And so as someone, myself, who has been preaching about the need for the Falcons to dial up more play action and be more effective running play action for the last 6 months, it was kind of like a mic drop moment for me, where I was just like, okay, like, this is just proof positive of what I've been saying for 6 months, right?
So Aaron Freeman clearly indicating here the Falcons left a lot on the table last season. Now, Michael Penix got 3 starts last season for the Falcons. I mean, he's their guy. This is the guy they invested a very high draft pick in to be their future. Is he someone, based off of what you saw him obviously first in college and then in the limited action that he got, do you believe that he can be the guy to turn this Atlanta franchise around offensively and truly maximize all those offensive weapons I mentioned earlier?
I think he has the opportunity to be. It's the question of, can he stay healthy and can he put it all together? I think that when you look at the weapons he has, and Kyle Pitts specifically, he is a weapon that they have underutilized for years, and it is almost criminal to the point how much they've underutilized him. But then you add in the running game to have a Bijan Robinson and be able to run the ball effectively, should be able to open up the pass. So Penix should be able to take this offense to the next level. It's, can he maximize and can he use the weapons that they have in Atlanta and be effective?
Yeah. And I think for the interesting part about the Falcons in that, we've talked about all these divisions, Chris, like, oh man, the NFC North is so tough. And the AFC East, man, they got some teams. And then, all right, well, here's the NFC South, and it's New Orleans and it's Atlanta.
He doesn't really have a quarterback.
Yeah. It's Carolina. Like, Tampa clearly is going to be the favorite here. Like, that's everybody's favorite going into the season here. I think Atlanta could be a sneaky team that maybe surprises some people. I mean, I'm not going to, like, if I'm on FanDuel, I'm not going to go and bet against Tampa right now. But is there a shot that, if Michael Penix can reach his ceiling, that they can overtake Tampa in that division pretty easily?
I would think that they have the opportunity to. It's just a question of whether or not you have Tampa that stays healthy, because they have their biggest weapons have injury histories. Chris Godwin is somebody that could really be a great receiver and also can be injury prone. So can they stay healthy in Tampa Bay? And if they can stay healthy, then I think that they are going to win the division. But Atlanta has the opportunity because the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints aren't probably going to be teams that are going to be going after winning the division in the South.
No, not at all. I think wild card is definitely on the table at the very minimum for Atlanta. Like, they should certainly be in that conversation, but it is going to depend, right? Can Michael Penix truly tap into that special ability? And I think that if he does, he has the potential to be one of the better quarterbacks in this entire class. But you can say that for a lot of these guys if they reach their ceilings. And coming up, we'll talk about a couple of guys, one who hasn't even played yet and the other who made a big impression on teams with his play in his rookie season. So coming up, we'll dive into J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix next on Locked On NFL. Back here on Locked On NFL with Chris Clark. I am Kevin Ostreicher. And Chris, J.J. McCarthy was expected to be in a battle for Sam Darnold last season with the Vikings after they spent a high draft pick, number 10. They got him in a trade. They wanted J.J. McCarthy. Now, obviously, he tears his meniscus. He does not play in 2024. Sam Darnold parlays that into a big-time deal with the Seattle Seahawks, because that Minnesota team, the reason he needed 15 wins to win the NFC North last year is because Minnesota had 14 of them, and it came down to literally week 18 in the last game of the season to determine who's going to win that division. Now, McCarthy's really intriguing, and the weapons around him are really intriguing too. Minnesota had one of my favorite off seasons this year. They beefed up their offensive line. They did the same in the defensive line room as well. You obviously, look, if you're throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison in your first year of playing, you're in a pretty good situation. Not to mention you can just dump that ball down to Aaron Jones or TJ Hawkinson. I think out of all these quarterbacks, Chris, my hot take is that J.J. McCarthy might be in the best situation this year in terms of who is around him.
It's really hard to argue that point, because anybody that's going to be playing with Justin Jefferson is going to have one of the best receivers in football, and it's not close. Like, you look at some of these other guys and who they're going to be throwing to compared to Justin Jefferson, and it's just not comparable. And, Jordan Addison is no slouch either, and that doesn't take into account, like you said, TJ Hawkinson or Aaron Jones, or being able to run the ball with Aaron Jones. So I do like the situation he's going to be in. And you saw how effective Minnesota was able to be with a limited Sam Darnold last year, because let's not forget, the whole reason that the Vikings didn't go further is because you saw Darnold's limitations late in the season, and then it really kept them from being able to do anything in the playoffs. So if McCarthy can show what he showed in college, and he can take a step forward. That's the big question. And how does he come back from the injury? Is he fully healthy, and can he start week 1 and be fully healthy and be the guy that's going to take them and try to lead them to the playoffs again and maybe beyond in year 2?
And Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings talked a little bit about how big of a year this is for J.J. McCarthy, not having any experience his rookie year, and what that means for him.
That's so huge.
Technically in year 2, right? So
Yep.
I want to play this from Luke, and then I want to talk to you about it, Chris, because I think he makes a couple of really interesting points here.
But in the event that the Vikings do have ups and downs, and maybe J.J. McCarthy has a bad game here or there, right? Or maybe he's takes a little bit. Maybe they start slow, and then over the course of the season, he gets a little bit more used to the pace of things, and he gets a little better. Even if they end up, 9-8 and out of the playoffs, or even 7-10 and out of the playoffs, if J.J. McCarthy shows us enough where we can still feel good about him as the future of the franchise, with the understanding that there is still probably improvement to come. He's very young. And so whatever version of him we see this year shouldn't really be taken as the final product here.
And I think that's the unfortunate situation, Chris, where, you didn't get that year last year to kind of see who J.J. McCarthy was. Maybe you had that year where they went 9-8, and then you say, okay, he showed you enough in Minnesota to say, yeah, he's the guy here, but the record doesn't show it. So this would be the year where, oh, boom, second year playing, going to be a big leap year, take off for J.J. The clock has now started just a year late. You got a great year from Sam Darnold, but obviously didn't amount to anything in terms of a championship. So are you okay, Chris? Do you agree with Luke where you'd be fine with Minnesota taking a step back record-wise, but the trade-off is that J.J. McCarthy shows you enough to understand that he is the future of that franchise?
I think you have to look at the quarterback just in general across the NFL. And I think that when you start looking at teams and how they've been formed, how they're doing things, it's not really fair to bring in a rookie and expect him to do very well. What I will say about Darnold and what he was able to do last year is he was a veteran. He knew the offense. He knew where he was supposed to go with the ball, and he got the ball out when he was supposed to. That really helped him, and that really made their offense a lot better than it probably should have been. But it hampered them later on because once you took that away, he struggled. So the question becomes, can McCarthy build on that? And it doesn't really matter what he looks like this year to me. And honestly, I basically am going to call this a rookie year for him because the reality is you don't get experience sitting on the bench. You don't get the same experience. You have to be on the field. You have to be seeing it, and you have to be dealing with the pressure and dealing with everything and being on the field. So to me, I fully expect them to take a step back when it comes to record because it's not fair to look at the situation and say, well, we expect you to get 14, 15 wins like Darnold did last year. That's not what you should expect from a young quarterback. And even if he gets to only 7 or 8 wins, I think I'd be okay with that as long as he's showing improvement game to game, which is what you want from a young QB.
Yeah, and there are advantages to sitting on the sideline for a year, but you're right. It's not the same as actually being in those moments yourself, feeling the pressure yourself and having to deliver in those moments yourself, where it's a whole different ball game because you either respond to that or you don't. And, we've seen plenty of quarterbacks sit on the sideline for a year and then come in and they can't handle that pressure. We've also seen it the other way where quarterbacks get thrust into action too early and they can't handle it and they didn't have enough time. So it's a delicate balance either way here. But I will say with Minnesota, again, their situation for J.J. McCarthy, I like what they have done to surround him and support him. So even if J.J. McCarthy is not a top 15 quarterback this year, and, he struggles at points, they have enough talent around him to hopefully pick up the pieces. But I do agree where I'm not sure that'll be enough to save them and say, oh yeah, they're going to win 14 games again. I would not put that expectation on them.
The biggest thing to me is they have enough talent on that team to where you can get a really good feel for what he actually is.
Yeah.
That's the biggest key for him and for young quarterbacks is, are they surrounded by enough talent to actually tell you what they are? Because some are put in horrible situations where they have no talent around them. He's not. He's in a fantastic situation. So I do think you're going to get a good read from what he's going to look like this year.
Yeah, one quarterback that was put in a great situation, particularly the defensive situation, was Bo Nix. That defense showed up for him over and over again. And while Bo Nix didn't have the name offensive weapons that others did, that Denver team exceeded everybody's expectations in terms of not only Bo Nix himself, but that team making it to the postseason. And while they didn't end their season great with that loss to Buffalo, still, I think a lot of people in Denver were very happy with how that season went. And so Sarah Bedinger and Cody Rourke over at Locked On Broncos, they talked about Bo Nix in year 2 and what he could amount to. So I want to play that clip, and then Chris will talk about it.
I mean, it's evident. I see it daily, just how different the locker room is, how it responds to Bo in comparison to Russell. Look, guys loved Russell Wilson. There were guys that liked him, but there was just a different dynamic when he was in the locker room versus now, like when Bo was in that locker room. It just seems like there's a level of calmness. Like you're not walking on eggshells, I think, in that locker room, so to speak.
I think one of the reasons is, Bo Nix isn't passing out danger witches or doing high knees in the locker room and all that stuff. But it's true. I mean, the element of a locker room in the NFL is, I think, such an underrated aspect, Chris, of things. And I think Cody's correct, where it wasn't like Russell Wilson was just universally hated in that locker room. But I think a shift, and especially for a young quarterback in Bo Nix, who was already kind of taken on that leadership role, he backed it up with his play on the field. It wasn't perfect for Bo Nix, but it was a lot better than I anticipated it being. And now, Chris, I know you being in that division with Bo Nix and having your Chiefs seeing that Denver team twice a year. I mean, what did you see in those matchups particularly? And what do you think Bo Nix can amount to at the NFL level?
What he can amount to in the NFL level is going to be trouble for Kansas City in the future. I'm not going to say that I expect them to overtake the division this year, but I do think that they're going to challenge a lot more for it this year than they did last. And I think that when you look at what the big difference between Russell Wilson and Bo Nix, you have a rookie coming in who has no real ability. Yeah, he's going to be a leader because he's a quarterback and you expect them to be the leader, but he's not going to have the same presence and he's not going to have the same respect that the veterans are going to give to a Russell Wilson, and they're going to defer to him even more. And I think that actually worked against Russell Wilson to an extent in Denver. But when you look at Bo Nix, I mean, he outplayed expectations last year. And I do think that when you start looking at this Denver team and what they can do in 2025 and 2026 under Bo Nix, I think you have to be excited because he played a lot better than you expected. He struggled early on. There were some bad moments early on in the season for him, but he came back and showed that he belongs in the NFL. And I do think that he's going to be challenging Kansas City. I don't know that it'll be in 2025, but I do think in 2026 and beyond, Denver will be challenging for the division.
A lot of up-and-coming teams, and that obviously has to do with a lot of up-and-coming quarterbacks. So hopefully not too many sophomore slumps in store for these guys. It always happens here and there, but a lot of talent in that 2024 draft class, and we'll see how it all unfolds. Chris, appreciate you being here with me today. You can go check out Chris over at Locked On Chiefs for all of your Chiefs insights as they hope to repeat in the AFC and get another Super Bowl under their belt and get revenge for what happened in that game last year. And of course, you can catch us here on Locked On NFL. It's a double dose. So you get Tyler Rowland, who I'm not, in the morning, the madman. And then you also get Tony Wiggins, the Locked On Jaguars. You get the barbershop in the afternoon. So if you want NFL content here on Locked On NFL, we are the place to get it. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you right back here soon on Locked On NFL.